Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Hi, thank you for being here. Thank you for your practice. Thank you for your support of this channel, this resource, the website, the books, all of it. Like, subscribe, please do that. It helps make this channel more available to more people. It's the Bodhisattva way. After that, it's up to each individual, right? This is our practice, your practice, my practice. No one can do it for us. I was thinking this morning on talking about integrity and what effort it takes to be a person, a human with integrity. It can turn into an hour-long lament on how much that's missing in our societies today, but I would rather, instead of pointing out how much of our society, our capitalistic world that looks to make $1 out of every sentient moment that we have, that it's important to find a way to integrity, because so little validates it in the world today. Ideas like truth, honesty, those things. And I just keep coming back to Buddhist practice. We can talk a lot of other ways about it in our social construct, but ultimately, Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. There is our dignity. So, keep trying to feed that, yeah? So, of course, after this where we left off in the last video, in the Lankavatara, Mahamati, it's his turn now to perk up and ask a question. But at this point, finally, and we're over halfway through the Lankavatara, it seems as though Mahamati is starting to get it. Albeit as a Sravaka, although he's alluded to in this story as a Bodhisattva Mahasattva, right? A very highly educated, qualified Bodhisattva. He is speaking, and Shakyamuni is addressing him as a Sravaka. And sliding in Pratyeka Buddha in there as well. So learning and realization, right? Those two worlds usually spoken of dualistically, ironically enough. There's this, again, I'm not going to restate it every single video, but we've talked, and certainly in the last one, this separation, this difference, this really quite a chasm between the intellectual knowing and the experience knowing. Seems like a small division, but it's really a critical one, yes? And so we're seeing Mahamati here grasping intellectually and peering, little peek, what this might mean. But we're not through yet. So, Mahamati poses the question, please explain concerning the deep-seated attachment to existence of all things and the way of emancipation, saying, please tell me, O emancipated one, tell me, Tathagata, fully enlightened one, concerning the characteristics, see the words bite him in the butt as soon as he asks the question, of our deep attachment to existence and of our detachment from it. See, this is the problem. This is the problem we all face, right? As we dissect our mind's activity, we are dissecting, discriminating, differentiating. We are doing the very thing that entangles us in our mind's identification of things. So you have to sympathize a little bit with Mahamati because words. So let's see if he can transcend those words and actually we can find what he's hunting at with these words that he knows. Yes? So what's the characteristics of that entanglement, that deep attachment to existence and our detachment from it? What does it look like when we let that go, when we don't do that? When I and other Bodhisattva Mahasattvas understand well the distinction between attachment and detachment, we shall know what is the skillful means concerning them, and shall no more become attached to words according to which we grasp meaning or grasp at. See, the fact that he doesn't say it that way, that he grasps meaning, is still this frustration with words equating with meaning. And this is a translation, so we don't even know how well Suzuki has interpreted this question, but we get the nature of it, yes? When we understand well what is meant by attachment to the existence of all things and the detachment from them, see, if there's truly a detachment, it's not a detachment from things, it's just detachment. Moving on, we shall destroy our discrimination of words and letters, and by means of our wisdom, our Buddha wisdom, enter into all the Buddha lands and assemblies, be well stamped with the stamp of the powers. Again, this is identification. He's identifying Buddha wisdom. The self-control, the psychic faculties, and the dharanis, and well furnished with the wisdom, Buddha wisdom, prajna, in the 10 inexhaustible vows, and shining with varieties of rays pertaining to the transformation body. Okay, he knows the term, but does he understand what that means? Behave ourselves with effortlessness like the moon, the sun, the jewel, and the elements, and hold such views at every stage as are free from all the signs of self-discrimination, self and other, and seeing that all things are like a dream, like Maya, etc., shall be able to enter the stage and abode of Buddhahood and deliver discourses on the Dharma and the world of all beings, and in accordance with their needs, and free them from the dualistic notion of being and non-being, in the contemplation of all things which are like a dream and Maya, and free them also from the false discrimination of birth and destruction, and finally shall be able to establish ourselves where there is a revulsion at the deepest recesses of our consciousness, or deepest recesses, which is more than words can express. So, sorry. What is bothering my teeth? So, he's got the verbiage down, right? And there's a sense here that he's starting to understand that beyond language, beyond the discourse that he's having, there's something to grasp that is not of the discourse. That you can't, no matter how many words you know or definitions you understand, language cannot grasp the experience of Buddhahood. That Buddhahood is an experience outside of the parameters, the apparatus that manufactures language, words, things. That the experience of life isn't a noun. It's not identifiable, person, place, or thing, but an action, more like a verb, being, moment to moment, manifesting integrity, being in momentum throughout the life process. So, the emancipated one, Shakyamuni, well said, Mahamati. You've regurgitated word for word the discourse we're using to define this shift from intellection to experience. So, again, listen well to me, reflect well within yourself. Here I go. And Mahamati, yes, of course. So Shakyamuni says, Mahamati, immeasurable is our deep-seated attachment to the existence of all things, and the significance of which we try to understand afterwards. Because, as we've already discussed, the words themselves are things we are attached to. That's not where truth lies. Those are the footfalls toward, right? For instance, there are the deep-seated attachments to signs of individuality, to causation, to the notion of being and non-being, to the discrimination of birth and no birth, to the discrimination of cessation and no cessation. Like anytime we identify something, we're immediately confronted with what it is not. And that is the core of the duality that traps us. And you can do the same thing with Buddhahood. Well, that Buddhahood, that's the thing that's different. And that's not correct either. Buddhahood stands apart from, outside of, is the all-encompassing momentum, action, what is creating that momentum, what is witnessing that momentum. The relation is just not there. It's hard to think that way because that's not how we are conditioned, and it's not our tendency in our mind's discriminations, yes? Identifications. For instance, there are the deep-seated attachments to signs of individuality, to causation, to the notion of being and non-being, to the discrimination of birth and no birth, to the discrimination of cessation and no cessation, to the discrimination of vehicle and no vehicle, of samskrita and asamskrita, of the characteristics of the stages and no stages, and the attachment to discrimination itself. identification. And to the arising from enlightenment, the attachment to the discrimination of being and non-being, on which the philosophers are so dependent, and the attachment to the triple vehicle and the one vehicle, which are discriminated. So it's in our very nature, our apparatus, I continue to call it, this very embodiment of life. We mistake the embodiment to be the life, but it is not. It is a moment-to-moment apparatus solely for the purpose of emerging a witness, a mind that can witness this amazing, powerful momentum of energy, yeah? These and others, Mahamati, are the deep-seated attachments treasured or cherished by the ignorant and simple-minded to their discriminations. That's not meant as an insult. It's meant as those who don't consider their momentum. They don't even know to envision. They're just plummeting through life. They're not questioning what life is. They're not seeking a profound understanding. They may not even be asking the questions that we call the big questions. Who am I? Why am I here? What am I doing? They just go on existing. They're in Buddhism's eyes, or in Shakyamuni's eyes, they're like plants. They're just doing what they do, right? You wouldn't look at a flower and think, I wonder if it considers itself. But we do. And we do how? Through a sentient mind, a witness that is critical of us. And that criticality is equivalent to our curiosity, our questioning. And people experience that or pursue that to different varieties, right? To different intensities. Some don't even ask. Or they just simply answer, well, I'm a woodworker. That's what I do. That's what I am. Right? How many times have you heard the cliche, I am what I do. Judge a man by his actions. And we reinforce that identification with work, physical actions, without questioning it. But it's a pale answer. At the end of the day, when we can't sleep at night, we know that we haven't truly answered the question. Why life? Tenaciously attaching themselves to these, the ignorant and simple-minded go on ever discriminating like the silkworms do, who with their own thread of discrimination and attachment enwrap not only themselves but others and are charmed with the thread. And thus they are ever tenaciously attached to the notions of existence and non-existence. Right? Like social media. Right? How many people using social media, and you know what I mean, everything. Phones, internet, commercials, everything, media, right? The capitalist engine that seeks nothing but our attention to quantify, qualify, sell. The illusion of social media is that somehow we're creating a web of communication, of transcendent honesty. And yet, how many times on social media have we felt vacancy? And the more we post and tweet and what have you, even just surfing, the more we just feel this, it's almost like we can see our very existence just flittering away. We become cavernous, sucked dry of our dignity, identity. How do we regain our sense of value? What is our identity purpose? Why even have an identity? These are the kind of questions that come of succumbing to this great web of discriminations, and fake identity becomes notoriety, becomes ephemeral, nothing of no value. Unless, of course, you own the latest iPhone. Now I have identity. Do you see how perverse that is? And this is what Shakyamuni is calling out as simple-minded, because this is very shallow thinking. But people trapped in that existence mistake that shallow thinking for something of value, something that it is not, something that is more profound. But before they can consider that thought, they're on to the next. But really, Mahamati, there are no signs here of deep-seated attachment or detachment. All things are to be seen as abiding in solitude where there is no evolving of discrimination. Now, we have to be careful about these translations and what that means. Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should have his abode where he can see all things from the viewpoint of solitude. Now, solitude, I'm going to say wrong word. Wrong word. Because right away, when we hear the word solitude, we think quiet, removed, solipsistic, alone, quiet. That's not at all what Shakyamuni is talking about here. So let's see if we can come up with a better word, or at least a better definition for what Shakyamuni is saying here. And I'm going to go back to things that he said before, so you don't think I'm making it up. Shakyamuni has many times identified the activity of the mind, the discriminations, the identifications, right? And he's made the analogy that it's like a grove of sal trees filled with monkeys, all chirping and screaming at you for your attention, for this moment, this moment, this moment. Kind of like the internet. Kind of like social media. All media is social by virtue of its being shared. It's really like a bunch of tiny little fish hooks emanating out to get your eyeballs and get your mind. Pay attention to me, me. Buy this new. Be more by owning this. Make yourself one of us, of this. If you're looking for analogies for the monkey mind, oh my goodness, it's everywhere all the time. You ever have problems falling asleep, right? Psychologists, philosophers call that racing thoughts. You're just jumping from one branch to the other. You even ask, am I thinking of anything specifically? What about that day in high school when those girl, that guy, you're just going all over the place. And of course you can't sleep. So in view of that cacophony of discriminations, identifications, seeking to identify with, without, that whole mechanism of mind. If you could just turn it down. Do you not feel that wash through you of the noise? Go away. Of course, you still have the visual. Now quiet that down. It's not a removal, as the word solitude would imply. It's a repelling. It's a being amongst. And that grove of sal trees with all the monkeys simply becomes monkeyless. And now you just have that grove of sal trees. And the leaves lightly fluttering in the breeze. And now it's glorious, it's wonderful, it's life-affirming, it's a big breath. That's more like a quietude, not a solitude. Do you see how words can be problematic? Translations especially. But we know from all of the study and reading that we've done, we know what Shakyamuni means here. Just like Virmalakirti did. That this land that we're in, we don't leave it to go to a beautiful Buddha land. That beautiful Buddha land is this land. It's a perceptive experience shift. So always remember, we don't want to be the victims of poor language. Further, Mahamati, he continues, when the existence and non-existence of the external world are understood to be due to the seeing of the mind itself in these signs, in the perception of the moment-to-moment instantiations of energy, that we ourselves are part of that momentum moving through time-space, those discriminations, still there, no longer have those little hooks in them. They just become things of fascination, part of the energy of life. The Bodhisattva can enter upon the state of imagelessness, where mind only is, and there see into the quietude which characterizes the discrimination of all things as being and non-being, and the deep-seated attachments resulting therefrom. So all those tiny little hooks, they suddenly, because the hooks are mentations. The energies manifesting are real, but our identification, discrimination, our mechanism of identifying a self as one of those things is where the attachment is, and it leads us astray. If we can let everything simply be moment to moment, then we can witness our being along with it, all of life fully manifested, without that diminishment, that holding us back, identifying footsteps without moving forward. This being so, there are in all things no signs of a deep-rooted attachment or of detachment. Because if there's no attachment, then there's nothing to detach. There's just being with, moment to moment, experiencing momentum, yes, energy itself. Here, Mahamati is nobody in bondage, nobody in emancipation, except those who, by reason of their perverted wisdom, recognize bondage and emancipation. Why? Because in all things, neither being nor non-being is to be taken hold of. This is very, very profound. This is at the core of the way Buddhism identifies, the way Shakyamuni identifies how life begets suffering and how it doesn't have to. Life is built on discrimination, attachment, right? The potential manifests in endless ways. And by virtue of that very fact, there is discrimination. So life itself instantiates the whole universe is discrimination. So why wouldn't we be beings witnessing discriminations? And in our turn, because we have a sentient mind, a witness, primarily turn that witnessing into identification. Here I am, but I am amongst all I ams. Every atom is an I am. And then we're kind of trapped in this thingifying. And of course, that mechanism at its core causes us anxiety, stress, grief, so on. And that's not something to rail against. That's not something to identify as evil. And that's not what Buddha and Buddhism does, although it may seem that way because of translations. The only evil Buddhism identifies are all of the various mechanisms, words, people, ideas that keep us from recognizing this very thing. Because we can rise above. We can stand without. We can perceive because we have a mind. We can stand aside while in and perceive the much larger vision of our life, identification, discriminations. From the standpoint of the entire play of the universe, the entire mechanisms of instantiation, of potential manifesting. If we can stand aside and witness that process, not get rid of it, but re-envision, therefore re-experience the little tickles we have in our bodies and minds about the happenings of life through time. If we can focus our minds on the happening, then immediately we're unglued from worries about carrying 40-year-old ideas with us, because they don't hold our attention anymore. Now we're just watching the process happening. Look at this, look at this, look at this, right? You ever notice when you're having a really great time, away go your worries? Poor little dog. I feel like I have to point out that that's my dog dealing with her breathing problems, so you don't think that I'm doing something rude. But it's also sympathy for Chloe. That's her name. She has a broken nose, and yeah. Anyway. Yeah, so I could sit here and stress and lament to you all day about how my little dog might have been injured and why she's having all of this and blah, 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 blah. Oh my goodness, worry, fret, man. But I just laughed about it. You're saying, well, that's cruel. Well, in this moment, this is what's happening. She's doing her best. I'm explaining to you so that you don't fret and worry about it. So please don't compile your own, right? Stories and so forth. It's just what's happening now. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. If we can live and train our minds to be that observer while in this process, moment to moment, then words like liberation and emancipation, they still, and Shakyamuni's pointing this out, they still hold with them those little tendrils or little hooks to the past. Because if you're liberating yourself, you must be liberating yourself from something, noun, that you've been dragging along. But if you truly make the mental shift, then the dragging is gone. So the emancipation, irrelevant. It's only a word we use, like a finger pointing at the moon, to indicate where we're headed, what we're hoping to accomplish. But when we get there, when we accomplish the quietude of mind, it isn't an erasure. It's a fascinated observation from within, without all those little tendrils and hooks. Wow. No emancipation needed because you're not in that anymore. Does that make sense? Further, Mahamani, there are 3 attachments deep-seated in the minds of the ignorant and simple-minded. They are greed, anger, and foolishness, sometimes translated as stupidity. When we make decisions based on emotional tugs, you must admit we are behaving stupidly, because stupidity infers that we are not using rational, reasonable thinking. It's not an insult. It's an identification of a trap. Yeah? Greed, anger, and folly. Greed, anger, and foolishness. Greed, anger, and stupidity. How often has Shakyamuni talked about this period in time after his passing being this age, this modern age of greed, anger, and stupidity? Here he is talking about it in the Lankavatara. It was true during his day. Right? Don't misunderstand that this is the only time period in history that people have been greedy, angry, and stupid. It's just that those are the 3 aspects of attachment that are most prevalent today. And if I have to point at the freaking social media or internet and the commodification of every little thought moment that exists, being that last refuge of the capitalist machine. And thus there is desire, which is procreative in the mind, and is accompanied by joy and greed, but they're fake. They're constructed joys and right? I want more, right? We've talked about this all the time, this possessive thing. I want more. I don't want to lose. That whole illusory existence is based on stuff that doesn't exist anymore in a real way. Closely attached to this, there exist there takes place a succession of births in the 5 paths, right? Hell, hunger, animality, anger, humanity. Thus, there are the 5 paths of existence for all beings who are found closely attached to greed, anger, and foolishness. When one is cut off from this attachment, no signs will be seen indicative of attachment or of non-attachment. When you release your ownership and become part of the flow of life, the whole problematic of what Nichiren calls earthly desires, they themselves become enlightenment. Now, Nichiren uses that tool, this reference to Shakyamuni's teaching, to explain that you can take all those energies that are constantly roiling in your mind and take them as a motivation, an excuse, a desperation, whatever discrimination you can create for that whole bag of nouns, and you can take it to this mandala, a perfect reflection for your mind, your monkeys, to shut the hell up and focus on Buddha-ness and enter that very realm that Shakyamuni is talking about here. The release, the total being of life, the quietude of everythingness, if I can put it that way, not the solitude of removal. That's misunderstanding. The being with entirely of life as it moves through time-space. I don't even need to think about all that other stuff. It's gone, because here I am, and I am, and I am, and I am, moment to moment to moment to moment. I am, I am, I am, I am. Everything is. Further, Mahamadi, depending upon the attachment to the triple combination which works in unison, there is the continuation of the Vijnanas incessantly functioning, right? The mechanism by which we perceive the world, discrimination and identification, our lower consciousnesses, we still see stuff, we still hear stuff, we still feel stuff, but now with a mind of, oh, isn't that interesting how I see stuff, feel stuff? Wow, it's ongoing. Not trapped and held behind by those little tiny wires with hooks, right? Here I am, here I am. No, that's not where I am. I'm here. Here I am being. And because of the attachment, there is a continued and deep felt assertion of existence. When the triple combination which causes the functioning of the Vijnanas no more takes place, there is the triple emancipation, and when this is kept in view by the mind, there is no rising of any combination of greed, anger, or foolishness. So it is said, the imagining of things not existent, this is the characteristic of attachment deeply seated in all beings. When the truth of this is thoroughly understood, the net of attachment is cleared away. The ignorant take hold of the knowledge of existence according to words that and are bound up like the silkworm with their own discriminations. Hence their ignorance of attachment deeply seated in their minds. That was a profound insight into the teachings of Shakyamuni, albeit struggling a little bit with translation errors and words, right? I have a little hope for Mahamati. I think maybe we're excavating more of a path to truth here, a path to enlightened moment-to-moment experience. No need really for a detachment. The detachment is simply a result of penetrating wisdom. Is this making sense? Please let me know in the comments what you're thinking. If you have any specific thoughts, you don't have to force yourself to write anything, but if you have an insight, let me know. I'd be keen to hear it. In the meantime, great appreciation, great courage in your practice. Thank you for that. I appreciate your efforts. I appreciate your liking, subscribing, supporting this channel. Patrons, we all are wonderfully supported by you. Thank you. In the meantime, you need to take care of your health, take care of your daily life. Yeah, you have one. Yes, it continues. Just keep your dignity about you. Yeah. And when something seems to assault your dignity, chant Namo Myo Renge Kyo, because your dignity is always there, always present. It's simply a matter of focus. How are you perceiving your day-to-day, moment-to-moment life? Be well, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay? Bye for now.